The instant Whoopi Goldberg posed the question about the one part of her life she kept locked away, the interview transformed. It was no longer a simple Q&A. At first, everything unfolded as Meghan had anticipated. Whoopi greeted her with a warm, professional smile, which Meghan returned with a polished grace that had become her armor. The initial questions were softballs: her recent projects, philanthropic work, and life in California. Meghan navigated them with ease, her tone warm yet measured, as if reciting from a well-practiced public script. But Whoopi wasn't focused on the smile, she was watching the eyes. And something in Meghan's gaze didn't match the words. So Whoopi pivoted. She didn't need to lean in or raise her voice. A deliberate pause was all it took for the audience to sense the shift. "Meghan," she began, her voice measured, "you've spoken often about your public struggles, but what of the private ones, the chapters you've never shared?" Meghan blinked, thrown off balance. "That's quite a broad question," she replied cautiously. "I feel I've shared a great deal." "I'm not talking about what you've shared," Whoopi clarified, her gaze unwavering. "I'm talking about what you've deliberately avoided." A ripple of murmurs spread through the studio. This was not on the cue cards. Meghan tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "I'm happy to discuss anything related to my work or my life in the public eye," she offered carefully. Whoopi shook her head. "No, I'm asking about you. The real you, the part you keep hidden, even when the cameras are rolling." Meghan's smile grew thin. "Whoopi, I'm not sure what you're referring to." A soft, sharp laugh escaped Whoopi, nothing like her usual warm chuckle. "Oh, I think you do." Meghan's posture stiffened. Her hands tightened on the armrests. The very air in the room seemed to grow heavier. "Why are you going there?" she asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Because," Whoopi stated, "every time you do an interview, you present the same version of your life. You never mention the one thing that truly shaped you, the part that explains everything else." Meghan swallowed. "And what do you believe that is?" Whoopi's response landed in the silent studio with the force of a pin drop. "Your family. Not the royal family, your own family, the one you left behind long before the palace ever entered the picture." The room froze. Meghan's eyes widened, not with anger or shock, but with something far more telling: raw fear. For the first time since she sat down, she looked completely unprepared. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. Whoopi didn't rush. She let the silence hang there, uncomfortable, exposed, and utterly unforgiving. Finally, Meghan exhaled. "I don't think that's fair," she said softly. "My relationship with my family is complicated." Whoopi raised an eyebrow. "Complicated is one word for it." Meghan looked up, her gaze meeting Whoopi's with a controlled tremor. "Every family is complicated. That doesn't mean it defines you." "Maybe not," Whoopi conceded, "but it does explain you." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And from everything you've said publicly, it seems you haven't dealt with your past as thoroughly as you claim." The remark hit its mark. Meghan shifted in her seat, her discomfort palpable. "My past is my past. I'm focused on my present, on the future I'm building with Harry." Whoopi leaned back slightly, her tone sharpening. "I understand that, but when someone cuts ties with their father, siblings, and extended family, and then expects the world to believe every conflict originated externally, people begin to ask difficult questions." Meghan's breath hitched. "You don't know the full story." "Then tell it," Whoopi challenged. "Not the polished version, not the protecting my peace version. The truth. Why did you distance yourself from your own family long before the tabloids became involved?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Because they hurt me." "How?" Whoopi pressed. "Say it." Meghan shook her head, her eyes darkening. "I'm not here to put my family on trial." "That's interesting," Whoopi noted calmly, "because you've had no problem doing exactly that with the royal family." A visible shockwave passed over Meghan's face, as if the floor had vanished beneath her. "That's not true," she insisted, struggling to reclaim her composure. "I shared my experiences because it was necessary." "Necessary for whom?" Whoopi asked. "For healing? Or for shaping a narrative?" Meghan's mouth tightened. "Are you suggesting everything I've said has been strategic? Are you suggesting everything you've said has been entirely honest?" Whoopi countered. A soft gasp echoed from the audience. The playful tension had evaporated, replaced by a raw, unfolding confrontation. Meghan's fingers trembled as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're twisting my words. I've never claimed to be perfect, nor have I claimed my family was." "You've painted a very specific picture," Whoopi replied. "A picture where you are perpetually misunderstood, mistreated, and cast as the victim of others' actions." "That's not what But when it comes to your own family," Whoopi continued, gently but firmly cutting her off, "you become vague, guarded. You speak in shadows. Why is that?" Meghan's jaw clenched. "Because some wounds are too deep to discuss on television." Whoopi's voice dropped to a near whisper. "And yet, you came here." Meghan blinked harder. "What are you implying?" "I'm implying," Whoopi said, "that the story you tell the world isn't the same as the one you're living." Meghan froze, caught between denial and a confession she couldn't voice. For the first time, Whoopi's expression softened, just a fraction. "Meghan," she said quietly, "what are you still running from?" Meghan didn't move, didn't blink, didn't seem to breathe. She simply stared, as if the question had struck a deeper chord than any accusation ever could. For a long moment she was silent, not for lack of an answer, but because the answer was something she had never allowed herself to speak aloud. When she finally inhaled, it was shaky and barely audible. "I'm not running," she whispered. "I'm protecting myself." "From what?" Whoopi tilted her head. Meghan's eyes fell to the table. "From becoming the person I used to be around them. Someone who was never enough, constantly compared, criticized, and dismissed. Someone who learned that love in my family always came with conditions." Whoopi nodded slowly, not in agreement but in recognition that Meghan was finally speaking without a filter. "And when you met Harry," Whoopi said, "you believed you'd finally found unconditional love." Meghan's head snapped up, not in anger, but in defense. "Yes, of course I did. Why wouldn't I?" "Because," Whoopi replied, "unconditional love doesn't erase old wounds. It exposes them." Meghan swallowed hard. "That's not fair." "It's honest," Whoopi said. "Look at the last few years. Since leaving your family, and then the royal family, it seems you've been fighting ghosts, your own ghosts." "That's not true," Meghan said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Then explain this," Whoopi said, leaning forward an inch. "How can someone speak so openly about conflicts in a palace, yet freeze the moment her own family is mentioned?" Meghan opened her mouth, then closed it. The audience held its breath. "Meghan," Whoopi continued, "people aren't confused because you have family issues. Everyone has those. They're confused because you champion authenticity and transparency, yet remain silent about the very part of your life that shaped you before fame or royalty." "I'm not obligated to share everything," Meghan said quietly. "No," Whoopi agreed, "you're not. But when you choose to share only half the story and lock the rest away, you create a public persona that doesn't align with reality." Meghan's eyes flashed with hurt. "You're saying I'm lying." "No," Whoopi corrected. "I'm saying you're curating." Meghan's breath caught. That word struck with more force than any blunt accusation. Curating? As if her life were an exhibit, with pieces carefully selected for public view. "I've been through a lot," Meghan said, her voice trembling. "I've had to protect myself, my son, my marriage, my past. It's messy. It's painful. It's not something I want dissected on a talk show." "And yet," Whoopi said softly, Your entire public narrative is built on pain, trauma, survival, and healing. But true healing demands honesty, and that begins with the parts of yourself you'd rather bury. Meghan's hands tightened. Why do you keep pushing me like this? Because, Whoopi replied, the world has heard every detail about the palace, but they've never heard the story that came before, the one that might actually explain why everything unfolded the way it did. Meghan shook her head slowly. This isn't fair. You're trying to reduce my entire story to my personal life. Whoopi offered a small, almost sad smile. I'm trying to understand the person behind the public story, the one you never let the world see. Meghan's voice dropped to a whisper. What if I don't want the world to see her? Whoopi's answer was quiet, almost tender. Then why step into the spotlight at all? Meghan's breath faltered. She had no answer, at least not one she was ready to give. She looked away, blinking rapidly as if the studio lights had become too harsh, too revealing. But it wasn't the lights laying her bare. It was the question itself. Whoopi waited, granting her space, not out of kindness, but because silence can be a more powerful revealer than any confrontation. Finally, Meghan released a breath that sounded like surrender. You think I've made myself the victim, she said quietly, but you don't understand what it's like when the outside world feels safer than your own past. Whoopi's expression softened, not with pity, but with understanding. I do understand, she said, but healing doesn't come from editing your story. It comes from confronting it. Every chapter, even the ones that frighten you. Meghan let out a slow, shaky breath. I'm trying, she said. I really am. Whoopi leaned back, her demeanor less severe. Then start there, not with accusations, not with polished interviews, but with honesty, real honesty. A long silence followed. This time it wasn't tense, but reflective. When the cameras cut to a break, Meghan didn't move. She remained seated, staring at the table as if replaying every word that had been spoken. The audience didn't cheer or gasp. They simply watched, stunned by what they had witnessed. A confrontation that was explosive not for its volume, but for its raw proximity to truth. For the first time that afternoon, the two women looked less like adversaries and more like mirrors. Engaging call to action for your audience. Did you feel the weight of that conversation? If you believe the real story is always more layered than the headlines, then subscribe. We go beyond the sound bites to explore the narratives the world thinks it knows, but never truly understands. Let us know your thoughts below. Was Whoopi too harsh, or was this the moment Meghan finally began to face herself?